Is Deja Cyrus, and I'm the manager of organizational development for our sector support team here at United Way of Central Indiana. I am very excited for our discussion today and to have you all join in as we discuss this important topic around the issue of equitable transportation access. So, as Sarah kind of just got said, as many of you, I'm sure, have encountered throughout the course of our work, equitable transportation access, it impacts an abundant portion of the communities that we serve. So, the inability to get to and from work or a grocery store, it can just truly affect a person's livelihood. So today we've gathered some really great speakers for you all. We'll hear from Brooke Thomas of Indigo, Emily Moe of Indigo Foundation, and then Suzanne Darengowski of Hancock County Senior Services as we explore the community hotspots and equitable solutions to this issue that impacts so many in our community. So without further ado, Brooke, I will hand it over to you to get things started.
Thanks, Deja. Thanks, Sarah. My name is Brooke Thomas. I'm currently the interim chief development officer for Indigo. So over planning and capital projects is probably the simplest way to explain it. A number of roles and responsibilities here at Indigo as far as transportation equity is concerned. For those that aren't familiar with Indigo, or even if you are, let me reintroduce you. So Indigo's mission is to connect our community to economic and cultural opportunities through safe, reliable, and accessible mobility experiences. How do we know we're doing that? We have a number of ways that we know. We do what's called an onboard survey, where we quite literally go on the bus quite regularly, and we ask our riders, right? So we want to know who is riding and how they're using the system, how it's being used. Is it serving them for the trips that they're taking? The results of that survey help with service planning and federal reporting, and really to help ensure that we're serving who we intend to serve. I want to tell you a little bit about the typical Indigo rider, as if there is such a thing, but based on our onboard survey, the typical Indigo rider identifies as an African-American woman. She is between 35 and 49 years of age. She uses the bus 5 days a week to travel between home and work. She is employed, but likely has a household income of less than $25,000 per year. She does not have access to a reliable vehicle, and she uses cash on the bus, but walks less than a quarter of a mile to and from her bus stop. When it comes to planning, we have numerous policies, procedures, and processes in place to make sure that prior to making a major service change or increasing our bus fare, for example, that vulnerable populations won't experience a disproportionate burden or disparate impact. And then we do it on the other side. So for performance, we have just as many policies and procedures and processes in place to make sure that we look back and the service that we did provide, or the bus shelters that we did put out, right? We have not had a disproportionate burden or disparate impact. On the screen is Indigo's Future Service Network, placed over top of, it's called a Social Vulnerability Index. The city of Indianapolis did this as part of their Thrive Indianapolis planning process, but they took, 12 indicators, right, and kind of laid them all together of somebody that might be vulnerable, and produced this heat map. So the warmer it is, the more vulnerable, right? There's a concentration of vulnerable populations. The cooler it is, less so. So we offer, hopefully you can see how, the existing transit network looks very similar, but the future transit network lays right over top of some of the warmest parts of our county. We offer kind of an affordable, reliable transportation option. More than 300 buses, 30 routes, nearly 3,000 bus stops, more than 8.4 million miles of revenue service every year, close to 6 million bus boardings each year, and recovering. Before COVID, we were at 10 million. We have close to 1 million trips a year taken for free or on, half fare. And Emily will touch on that a little bit. And that's our youth, elderly, disabled, our veterans. And then there are more than 160,000 trips taken by our paratransit customers. So these are individuals through, no doing of their own, but they can't make use of the fixed route bus system. So we provide door-to-door service for them. Our reach is more than just the bus service, right? So we're connecting essential workers, but we're also uplifting the community through infrastructure and improvements. A lot of our bus rapid transit project investment is just, quite honestly, public works, right? The city of Indianapolis would repave a street if we weren't doing it. We partner with the foundation and others to meet the needs of our riders. We've got sponsored rides. We've got a strategy to improve bus stop accessibility. Many of you have probably driven by a bus stop that's just on a utility pole in a ditch, right? Not what we're aiming for. And then we're more than a bus company. So we have wellness and transit to provide resources that enhance the well-being of our riders. And honestly, anybody that visits the transit center. So the medical clinic partnered with Marion County Public Health Department. We have food in transit where we provide fresh, affordable, locally grown produce at the transit center. People can pay what they can, right? But this idea that you can get those things just on your way to wherever you're going and you don't have to go out of your way or make a special trip. And music in transit, right? Because it's important to celebrate this amazing community that we're in. So these are local artists and they go on the bus and on the station platforms and perform. So that's an overview of who we are.
We'll take it from there. Deja, if you want to go to the next one. Right, so I'm Emily Moe, and I'm the executive director of the Indigo Foundation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit that was created in 2018 to increase access to transit in Indianapolis. As far as I know, we are the only transit foundation in the country with dedicated fundraising staff. So we are blazing the trail for what Transit Foundation may be, just like how the Parks Department has a foundation and public safety and the library. We're doing the same for transit. We act as a force multiplier for Indigo, reducing accessibility barriers to transit. We let Indigo take care of driving the buses, and then we help people get to the bus. So our programs focus on reducing the financial and fiscal barriers to transit. For the physical barriers, as Brooke mentioned, Indigo has about 2,900 bus stops. Most were created before ADA laws passed in the 90s, and so many are still not ADA accessible. And stops are very expensive. Concrete is expensive. It takes about $23,000 to make one stop ADA accessible. So it would take about 40 million to make all of Indigo's eligible stops accessible. So I think of that as job security for the foundation. In addition to investing Indigo's capital funds, Indigo receives federal grants to design the ADA accessible stops. And then in the last couple of years, the foundation's come alongside them to raise more than $1 million towards construction of these stops. And as a result, the Near East Side will receive more than 50 stop upgrades in the next year. And more to come. There's a plan for the Far East Side to get a batch in a few years late down the road. So we're still looking for more construction money for that. For financial barriers, we help to bridge the gap on the free and discounted rides that Brooke mentioned. Indigo provides free fare to veterans and half fare to seniors, students, and people with disabilities. We also seek sponsors for free fare days. You may recall AARP has sponsored free fare on election day for the past 2 years. But the programs most of you on this call probably know us for is our bus fare grants and our discounts. We started distributing free bus passes to nonprofit organizations through a grant application in 2021. A side note, we strive to keep our grant application reports very simple. We've all been on the other side of filling out applications. I'm still filling out grant applications every day. So our maximum grant value is about $4,000. And so we don't believe the application should take hours of your staff's time because we know that's not a huge amount. Also, while it's a competitive grant, we've been able to fully fund all requests for the past 2 years. Every year it gets a little bit more challenging as more organizations apply, but our fundraising team is up for the challenge. Last year we granted to 100 organizations, so we'll see what we get this year when applications open. It'll be towards the end of the summer. In 2023, we added a 50% discount program where nonprofits can receive access to purchase full price passes at a 50% discount year round. Let me say that again. So Indigo offers half fare to seniors, students, people with disabilities. It's not what we're selling. We are selling full fare passes at a 50% discount. Sounds like it'd be the same thing, but it's not. We offer trainings to teach you how to ride. But in the last year, we've had more than 150 organizations take advantage of that 50% discount program, and that's just in the first year. So it has really taken off, and we've seen that nonprofits appreciate having a one-stop shop to go to for free and discounted passes. In total, we serve more than 200 organizations in Marion County. And as a result, just a few weeks ago, we hired our first nonprofit relationship manager. Her name's Jennifer Griggs, and her role is solely focused on serving our nonprofit partners and connecting them with transit fare, the training, the resources. We know, especially if you don't ride, it can be complicated or confusing to explain how to use free fare or explain to your clients how to ride. And so that's part of what we do is training on the different types of fare, value, and all the things Indigo. And Jennifer, that's what she's here to do. In closing, I want to share a couple things that we've learned in the past 3 years working with our nonprofit partners to increase transit access for your clients. So I'm going to get on my soapbox for a minute. I think we can all agree if somebody needs a bus pass to get to a doctor's appointment, they also need it to go to the grocery store or work or connect with friends. But the way transportation funding is handled by many funders, not United Way, it's counterproductive. We hear from our nonprofit partners that many funders will only provide funds for a one-trip pass to get the individual to the nonprofit service. And as a result, the system has trained service providers to hold on to passes, afraid that someone else who needs it more might come along later. And in the end, the individual who may have gotten to their doctor's appointment that this nonprofit provides, that one trip pass, they can't afford to get to the grocery store to get the healthy food that the doctor recommends or other things that they need. So again, this way that transportation has been funding is just not, it's not productive. And so we're trying to break that mindset and demonstrate to both our funders and our nonprofit partners that investment in the longer term transportation solutions like a 30-day pass or a week's worth of MyKey card value yields greater results for clients. And with our discount program combined with Indigo's MyKey fare capping, we're making that more affordable for nonprofits to budget. It's easy for me to say budget for transit, but we're helping you to make it easier to budget. For example, it can cost your organization about $1.12 a day for a client to ride transit as many times as they need in the day. That's taking advantage of what the foundation offers and what Indigo offers. Many of our nonprofit partners have learned this through receiving a grant for free. We've seen people get a grant one year and then the next year they come back purchasing fare. And we're seeing more and more of our organizations start to budget for transportation fare as they see the dividends that it can pay when you make that investment. But for being a basic need, we still would love to see more funders freely fund transportation and more nonprofits budget for it and demand it. And so we're here to help support the sector, not just in providing you all the fare, but in having that communication with the funders and explaining why this is the way it is. We've got your back. So getting off my soapbox, if any organizations have not checked out our bus fare programs, there's information on our website, which is indigofoundation.org. And again, the next round of free fare grants will open up in the late summer. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Emily. And now, Suzanne, I know that being in Hancock County is a little different than being like within the Marion County region. So we would just love to hear your approach to these equitable solutions and the issue around equitable or accessible transportation. Oh, Suzanne, you're muted. There
Interrupting you.
we go.
Make sure that's too. There you go. Didn't want to interrupt, and so then I muted myself right out of it. Hancock County Senior Services has been around since 1978, and their main mission was to help people age in place. So be able to live where they want to live and get where they need to go. And they've been doing transportation since that time. And then about 2005, NDOT came to this organization and said, hey, you're transporting people anyway. Why don't you be the public transportation provider for Hancock County? So they've been doing that since 2005, and I've been here since 2020. So recently we have been sort of shoved into the urban world of public transportation funding because of the population growth in Hancock County. Didn't really change our operation a lot. It changed more just the funding structure and the things that we have to do to report to the federal government and all those things a little bit. But other than that, it didn't change delivery very much. Our transportation is what they call demand response. So it'd be very similar, I think, to Indigo's paratransit in a lot of ways. Our vehicles are primarily vans. We also have one cutaway bus, but it doesn't really get used that much because Hancock County is a fairly large county. So we move around long distances to get people where they need to go. It is difficult sometimes to get to everyone that we need to get to, just because they do need to do a little bit of planning. And I'm sure that Indigo gets that too with the paratransit. It's not an immediate ride. People aren't just running around, the vans aren't just running around waiting to pick someone up. They do need to make an appointment. So we try to encourage people to, as soon as they know they need to go somewhere, to call and make an appointment. But that is a little prohibitive sometimes for people who, just aren't in a position to do that. But other than that, I mean, it is a door-to-door situation. We pick them up where they are and we take them where they need to go. All of our vehicles are handicap accessible, and so they're all designed to be able to transport wheelchairs. And so we do a lot of non-emergency medical transportation day to day, especially around dialysis and things like that, where people have found themselves in a wheelchair and their family vehicles are not equipped to transport someone in a wheelchair. So we do a lot of wheelchair transportation. For seniors, because that was our original mission, much like Indigo, we actually offer we call them donation only rides to essential destinations. So if it's medical appointments, banking, grocery, those there's not a set fare for that for seniors 60 and over. All our other fares are $4 per stop. We do try to do as much ride share as we can because it has resulted in some really cool relationships between people. I just met a couple of ladies that met on the way to dialysis, and they are fast friends, and I wish I was their best friend because they are so much fun and in such a terrible situation. But regarding the sort of picture of who our riders are, most, I would say 60, I think the last count we did was 62% of our riders are seniors still. And about as high as 70% are at the 185% of poverty or below. So that is a population that needs us the most, which is why we are so happy to serve them. We travel, I don't know, I think it was 173,000 miles or something last year. It's a fair number of miles in our community, but we have the advantage of having a staff of people who are here they're not making a lot of money. They're here because they're mission driven and they are very attentive and wonderful with the clients. We do run into some issues when you talk about transportation barriers. Right now, we can sustain 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And so often we hear from, and I sit in lots of meetings in Hancock County with other service providers that say transportation is the barrier. And oftentimes they need evening time and early morning transportation. And but they can't, that we're having trouble getting data to understand how big of a need it is. We did do prior to my time, so we may need to do it again. We did a pilot program on Saturdays to see if that was the hole that needed help, but it did not result in a real sustainable population. So we're kind of looking for, my idea is to maybe create some version of an Uber type experience for those off hour times where people could call and we could hire people specifically for that. I'm not sure how to package that yet. We're kind of doing some research on that. We do, however, offer free rides to all to the food pantries and the soup kitchens. Hancock County has a lot of services in the regard of food. So we do try to make sure that everyone gets that ride. And then we also have, we're allowed to have up to 50% per day, what we call subscription rides. And so we do take several people to work every day. And we also have people, like I said, on dialysis that have a regular ride that they must have. And so we do have a fair amount. We push that limit quite often on subscriptions because we do have a lot of people who need the subscription rides. We also work pretty closely with the county and the hospital to make sure that we can adjust if they have folks who have been discharged from either the jail or the hospital who came in on their vehicle and do not have a way to get home from those places. So we work very closely with them. And if they have that situation, then they have agreed to hold on to the person for a few minutes while we can make an adjustment and maybe get them on that one-way trip that they need home from a traumatic situation. So I think that's, we get some other funding from the other communities and their townships and things. And so we try to work real closely with them to make sure that, we're meeting their needs. The township trustees are the instrument that helps people when they have some very special needs. Maybe they're struggling with housing and transportation. And so we are in pretty close contact with those trustees to make sure we can be there to help. And then Hancock County doesn't have a lot of real traditional mass media. So we work pretty closely with all the other nonprofits. We meet fairly regularly. So we're all aware of each other's services, so we can cross refer often. And then we're working with CERTA right now to pilot a cross-county project to where we could meet in McCordsville and pass people back and forth for work or for medical. We do a small number of medical trips outside of Hancock County now. And then we also obviously connect with Indigo in the one spot right now in Cumberland at the hub there on Washington. So we do a fair amount of that handoff on that side of the county. And then we're working with Hamilton County on the northern side of the county. So we don't get often regular trip requests for the cross county, but we do. We have made some special trips, often sad ones. We took a lady to make sure she could attend her husband's funeral, for example, which we often get those requests. And because we're senior centric, on the other side of our work, we oftentimes there's special circumstances, and we try to meet those where we can. So that's sort of us in a nutshell.
Well, thank you, Suzanne. I have a few follow-up questions for you all. Suzanne, I heard you mention that all of your transportation vehicles are handicap accessible, and then you mentioned a little bit about your collaboration in hopes of creating cross like county collaboration with the solutions as well. So what best practices should any CBO be adopting to help improve transportation equity in Central Indiana community and surrounding areas, wherever they may be located?
Yeah, the biggest part is what the folks from Indigo also alluded to, is just instructing people how to access the transportation. In my opinion, ours is different than yours, obviously, because we have a little more limited usage, but we spend a fair amount of time communicating to, and right now I'm working on it specifically directed at medical facilities so that they understand the other people who are helping our people understand how to access the transportation, so that if they're in the position of guiding someone through how to access it, that they have the accurate information to do so. So for me, in a smaller community, making sure your nonprofit partners all understand how that works so that they can guide people. That to me is the best thing that I believe we can do right now. You can put a rider's guide out all day long, but most of the time it requires maybe some guidance from someone you trust that can help you. And so when they get the opportunity, then they have the accurate information, and guiding people who maybe aren't used to planning ahead as to why that's important. And then even, saying, hey, there's a reason why we ask you to cancel, and call ahead when you have to cancel a trip, because that leaves it available for someone else. So just all of those things that keep as much access available as possible to everyone and help them understand how to use it. We have added some things. So we have added the software that we use to schedule our trips. We have added a reminder call, so they get a reminder call the night before, so that if it is something that has changed or whatever, if they've forgotten, they get a reminder call, and then I think it's about an hour before we're ready to come, they get another call or text that says someone's on their way and they're due to be there about this time. That has helped tremendously. It's helped save our staff time, and it's also helped people just develop the habits that they need for being able to access the rides.
That's really nice. That's really good. I know that I could use a reminder an hour before I need to be leaving.
That's the thing, and we're able to, for example, adapt our software adapts so that if we know someone needs a little more time, each ride's scheduled to take this long. And so we can adapt our software so that if someone is using a walker, or it takes them a little longer to get out of the house, we can give them a few more minutes. And so
Yeah.
it's adaptable to the individual, which I think is also a really good practice for that.
Yeah, and that's accessibility as well. So that's really good insight. And then Emily and Brooke, I would love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Emily, I heard you mention just about like around the topic of the affordability and creating some of these equitable solutions, whether CBOs are implementing them themselves or they're collaborating with a different organization. So would just love to hear from you and Brooke both. What first steps do you think that CBOs can take to implement any of these solutions to this issue at their organization?
I was going to piggyback on what Suzanne said and get your employees on the bus. I mean, that is a barrier that we find working with our nonprofit partners and with our sponsors. When we're in our sponsor meetings, one of the first things we do is ask people to get their phone out, pull up Google Maps, and like figure out how to get to your house. using transit. I mean, it's part of Google Maps. It's just that little transit icon, and people don't realize it's that easy. And the first barrier we have to overcome is training and getting people over the step of how to ride. But I think along with that, and also budgeting for transit, I know it's easy for me to say in this position, just budget for it. But we're really trying to make it more affordable for organizations to use, because when you're giving somebody a pass for a month, or even we have a program where we give individuals that are newly employed 3 months of transit value. It really can open them up to many more opportunities and give them that stability when they don't have to think about how am I going to get someplace. So those are my two takeaways. I'll let Brooke jump in.
Yeah, I might pivot just a little bit away from what you all provide to kind of how you make decisions about where to locate. Right. So from time to time, service providers will move. And I would implore everybody, if transportation access, if bus access is important to either employees or the clients that you serve, that you work directly with Indigo and you're looking for that new property. Because even when there's a line on the map or a bus stop out front, it doesn't mean that it will always be there. Or if it is, it doesn't mean that it's meaningful service. Far too often, human service providers move away, further and further away from where we're able to offer meaningful service. And it's almost nearly impossible to just change the network to go to those locations. So we're often put in a position where we can't help, or we are no longer part of the solution.
Wow. Well, thank you both for your insights on that. Before we get too much further, I do want to open the call up for Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to come off mute, drop your questions in the chat, but I do want to allow some time for our listeners to, ask you all some questions.
I have a question. My name's Allison Wary, and I'm with New Hope of Indiana, and we are a disability services provider in Indianapolis. And I know you guys are well familiar with us, but I think that Open Door, which I know is a contract provider with Indigo, but this is a continuous problem, is transportation for people with disabilities. Our two biggest issues are one, getting people to work on time. There's enough prejudice against individuals with disabilities in the workplace. And when they can't get to work for 2 hours after their job starts, it just exacerbates those issues. So that's number one. And then number two is just sort of the regular ticket riders that come and go from day services. And I'm not just speaking for, I don't know if there's any other disability services providers, but what I'm saying really applies to all of us. But it is also, regular ticket providers that their ticket is at 8 in the morning and they may not arrive until 11. I just sadly had this exact issue happen. We have a board member who has a disability and he could not attend. He got on the bus at 9 o'clock for a noon meeting. I don't know what happened, but the poor guy was just, embarrassed and miserable, but because he could not attend the board meeting. Now, that would have been his same for his day service, appointment day. So these are fairly regular appointments that people these are regular appointments that people are not getting to day services on time, which is, one issue, but it's also on the back end when they need their medicine at a regular time, or, they miss dinner. So, it's just continuous. So I guess my question for you do you guys have any plans for Indigo that you can, announce, or, have any good news for our, for
Yeah.
that piece, Open Door piece of it?
Yeah, you're being extremely kind, Allison. So for both our paratransit service and our fixed route service, and it's not unique to Indigo, this is true for every transit agency across the country, but we have a severe operator shortage. We need more than 400 bus drivers to deliver our future service, and we are really struggling on both sides. Even our contractor, right, struggling to get operators for paratransit. So I guess if there's good news, it's that we're starting to see that stabilize. Our recruiting classes are growing, and we're retaining operators a little bit better than we were the last couple of years. So we know it's a problem. I rode the red line earlier this week, and a bus is supposed to come every 15 minutes, right? You're not supposed to have to even rely on a schedule. It's supposed to be our premium service, and I waited for 45 minutes, right? So I'm in a position where I can go investigate why, right? But other people aren't. We know we need to provide reliable, consistent service if we're going to be an option for people.
All right.
I'll jump in with, I mean, it's a way that the foundation comes alongside Indigo that's not covered in the graph that I put up about our programs, but we look at opportunities within Indigo that need improvement. Workforce development was one of them. And we look for grants that support that. So we were a recipient of the IAQLI grant over a year ago to provide a community recruiter position. So it was a new position at Indigo, who's out in the community, has over 30 partners. Some of them are on this call, to actively get people into jobs. And part of that ability to increase our service is because of her work. So we are at the foundation side, we look at Indigo's service and know the challenges that they have, understand what they're going through, and try to find private funding solutions to help push it along as best we can. Because we know the best thing we can do is just provide better service and provide reliable service, whether it's, I mean, regardless of the amount it costs to get on the bus. If the bus is not there when you need it, it's not going to help you get where you need to go.
Well, I appreciate that, and I will be happy to tell my team, including the individuals we serve, that you guys are working on it, and we'll continue to hopefully see some progress in that area. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the question, Allison. Any other questions? Anybody want to ask anything, express any concerns? If you want to just probe their brain a little bit, please feel free to come off mute, drop your question in the chat box, whatever you feel comfortable with. We also have a Q&A function as well. Well, for me personally, Emily, I have a question for you. I heard you mention, well, I want to rewind a little bit. Before I began collaborating with you all about this call, I did not know that there was a side of Indigo that was Indigo Foundation. So this is all new news to me, and I'm happy that I'm caught up to speed. But I did hear you mention just a little bit about the Indigo Foundation grants. So I would be curious to know what some of those grant requirements are.
We keep it pretty simple. If you are a nonprofit in Marion County or serving Marion County, you're eligible. So we serve partners for all different reasons, all different sizes. I mean, our goal is to make our applications and our reporting able for a small food pantry to be able to do. And so it really is that easy. Is if you're a nonprofit in Marion County, you have to agree to not resell the passes we give you for free. And that's pretty much it. So on our website, we have a whole section for nonprofit resources that guides you through the grants opportunities, but also the discounted program. So the grants are once a year that we open those up in the late summer, and they actually are distributed in January. And then the discount is something that you can take advantage of year round. So you can sign up for that at any point. Give us a couple weeks to we vet to make sure you're a nonprofit in good standing. And then we get you a code so that you can purchase passes through our Shopify website that we have set up.
Oh, that's really good information and resources.
And you're not the only one that doesn't know Indigo has a foundation. So we've only been around for about 4 years. We are here. I'll spare you the whole story, but we're a legislatively mandated transit foundation as part of the BRT expansion of Indigo. The State House mandated that Indigo create a foundation to help support these projects. So we're not going anywhere. And that's something we want our nonprofit partners to know, that we have to be here because the state statute says we have to be here. So we will be providing, helping you all and providing these discounts for as long as we possibly can, or as long as the state says we have to. But now that we're here, no, we're realizing the value of it. So
good. Yeah, and if you would like to share the, I know you mentioned the Indigo Foundation page with like the grant requirements and additional information. If you send that to me, or I can pull it up, but I want to make sure I'm on the right page with everything on there. I can send that out to everyone as well. I think that's really great information because the requirements seem pretty direct and to the point, which I think a lot of our organizations could use that. So got it. Perfect. I will definitely take that down. Any other questions, anyone? Oh, it looks like we have a question in the chat. It says, in the vein of the title of this call, transforming transportation for equitable access, how do you see the state of transportation changing in order to address equity challenges? So I'll pause there. It looks like there's a few other questions within that, but I'll pause and then we can dive in a little more.
I'm going to start with, I just came back from a conference of it's called APTA. It's the Public Transportation Association for the whole country. And a theme there was how transit organizations can't just provide transit anymore. They have to meet their riders, deal with the issues that the riders are presenting, mental health challenges, housing. Transit agencies are getting more to look like social service providers. And for example, Indigo is hiring right now a social worker position. So if you know anyone, we need a social worker to help address the challenges that our riders have. So without a social worker on our staff, our only option when a rider is in crisis is to refer to law enforcement, and that's not the best solution. So by having this social worker on staff, we'll be able to refer to other nonprofit organizations. And this is something that's happening across the country. I mean, and there's organizations that have someone fully dedicated just to dealing with the homeless population and unhoused, and how to meet their needs better with the transit system. So that's one way that I'm seeing a trend that I've been seeing in transit, and I've only been in this for 4 years, is looking at more of the social needs of our riders.
Well, and since Hancock County Senior Services sort of got their start as the senior service organization first, a lot of that what I love about our employees is that they are, and because we are door to door, they can watch out for the clients. So when they go pick up someone who rides very regularly and something doesn't look right, we have information that we can then check in on them. So our dispatch team often is checking in on someone who didn't arrive where they were supposed to be, or maybe they showed up for an appointment and they're not there. We also do services for seniors that we're always doing, so that when one of the service providers notices that, or one of our departments notices that the senior needs something else, then we can wrap services around them to help them. We also, like you talked about, the resource and referral, because we spend a fair amount of time coordinating and collaborating with the other service providers. We can then gently pass people to where they are, other services they need to have in order to be successful. So it's we have that sort of luxury already of sort of being there, because that's where we started. So
I think for things to change and become more equitable, I think we need permanent affordable housing near transit. They get priced out. And then I just think the land use development, right? Like needs to come alongside because we can, if Emily found us all our money to make all of our bus stops ADA accessible, that's just the pad and the stop, right? You have to have sidewalks. You have to have a safe pedestrian network for people to be able to get to and from all the places they want to go, right? It's not just to and from your doors or to and from their home door. We've got to do a better job of recognizing that there's this very important link between land use and development and transportation. So do we need gas stations? Sure, absolutely. This is not a war on the car, right? But maybe it just doesn't need to be at a BRT station, right? Like maybe it could be somewhere else.
Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing. And then also want to just allow some more space if you, are there any additional questions as well? And Larry, I see your shout out to New Hope. So appreciate the call out. Any other questions? Well, before I let you all go, I do want to forecast our next sector call. If you are not aware, the Department of Labor has made a ruling to increase salary thresholds for certain FLSA overtime exemptions. So in some way, shape, or form, this may impact your organization. So we will be having labor lawyer Katie Stowers on to kind of discuss what this looks like, what changes will be made, how it will impact your organization, and what you should be aware of and on notice for. So that call will be taking place. Let me double check to make sure I have the absolute correct date. June 21st. June 21st. So please be sure to mark your calendars if you need me to forward the invitation to anyone in your organization or share it with anybody, please let me know. But please be sure to tune in for that. And before I let you all go, I just want to thank Emily, Brooke, Suzanne. This was very informative. As I mentioned, I came into this topic, this call, not as aware as I should have been. So I think you guys gave us some really valuable information. And for me, you put it in a way that was very easy to digest. So I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you all coming on the early Friday morning when you could have been anywhere else. So I thank you all for being here, and to our attendees as well. Thank you all for coming and listening in. And I hope that this was helpful. So hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to come back anytime.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.